Earlier, myself and Blake were at the media availability, the practice for the NBA Finals with the Mavericks and the Celtics, and a lot of opportunity to talk to everyone involved. And one of the things that came out of this, obviously, we talked about Kristaps Porzingis, who has a particular injury that I'm not going to be able to read again because it's a lot of things happening. Just know it's considered a serious injury, and he is labeled as day-to-day. With the Mavericks, though, Luka Doncic going into Game 2, we knew that he was dealing with some things. In Game 1, he had taken a charge that we believe created a thoracic contusion for him. And we knew that he was dealing with some pain, but we did not know that it was to the point that ESPN's Tim McMahon and Malika Andrews contributed to give us earlier today, which is that he needed a painkiller shot to help ease that pain for Game 2. And so going into Game 3, what does that mean? How does that affect the way that you view Luka Doncic? And honestly, like the lack of defense, his blow-bys, as you detailed so well last night in your Blake down, as we've called it, of what's been happening in the series. Like, how important, or what was your mind state when you found out that, hey, Luka Doncic had to go as far as getting a pain shot in order to be able to handle the workload that he's dealing with right now?
So I'll speak for myself on this front. When I saw the tweet first, I went and grabbed you and Kevin. I was like, bro, look at your phone. Look. Oh,
I forgot you were the one who pushed me today. Yeah,
I was like, look what Tim just tweeted. This is crazy. But kind of taking a step back, I don't think Luka is one where like pain is gonna like deter him from his game plan and mentality. Not like, oh, we've seen it right in front of our face, so it's easy for me to say like, oh, my kneecap is hurting, so now I can't shoot the ball. What I do think it does is his defense is probably not going to get any better. My thought process with this, I almost feel like he does a good job of stopping that initial drive on defense. That first move, Jason Tatum goes right really quickly. He kind of bodies no Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, the Jays. It's the second, third, fourth counter move that these players are putting on him. And these are good isolation players. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, don't let anybody tell you any different. These guys are amazing, elite in isolation. And whether they score or not, they're putting so much of a toll on Luka's body because it feels like every possession they can bring him into the action, they're doing that. And it's 15 seconds of ISO on just Luka. And so whether the Mavs get to stop, Luka gets a steal, he gets fouled, whatever, that's just a wear and tear. So now it gets to the fourth quarter and we talk about his numbers dropping a little bit in the fourth quarter. We talked about him being banged up. You're carrying all the offensive load. We all know about that. You're getting brought into every action on the defensive side of the ball. Like, it just is a lot. I think he is one on the team that you feel very confident will push through, will not complain, will not use it as an excuse. And so,
yeah, I mean, he was asked earlier today about that.
Shut it down quick.
And he was like, I'm okay. And then he said, I won't go into detail. And that was before we learned of the shot. And so I think this is where it gets a little interesting for me, because Luka Doncic often waves these away. The idea that he was like, I'm not going into detail on this, it's another level. And let me ask you this, because this has been a hypothesis I'm working on, but I don't feel strong enough about it to say it outright. But I do wonder if will this maybe affect his physicality offensively? Because one of the things that Luka does very well is he uses that strength. Yes, he uses his pace. He uses the slow step, all those things, but he also likes to use his physicality. And this is a series in which physicality has mattered a lot. Yep. Do you think that that particular pain in his torso might slow him down from using that physicality?
I think it is something where it'll look a little bit more like Game 2, where we saw a lot of the mid-range diet, the mid-range shot diet, where he's just kind of settling for that. He might not be barreling down into the lane. I think when he sees that guy step up, hey, I know I'm talented enough to shoot this floater, to shoot kind of this sidestep jumper, to kind of shoot this turnaround, what he likes in the post, that turnaround jumper. I think we're going to see a lot of that. I will say, and we kind of talked about this at the end of the show yesterday, people on social media and people, even my friends, have been making kind of a big deal about the physicality as far as how they're guarding Luka and they're able to get hands on him and they're kind of hand checking and body checking. I'm going to be honest, guys. I'm watching the game very closely. I don't think it's that egregious. I think it is some tough love out there and they're letting them play. But for me personally, as a basketball fan, I enjoy that more. Letting a little bit of hustling and tussling go. Now, is that going to change coming back to Dallas? Or some of those calls not going to go your way? Or are they going to call those quote unquote hand checking fouls, those body up fouls? Maybe, maybe not. But I think on the opposite side of the ball, you do bring up a great point. He could be a little more hesitant to go inside the paint.
All right, so let's switch gears. I mentioned, media availability, all those things. What were some of the things that we learned there? And one of the things to start with on the Luka front, he did not partake in the physical activities, at least in the part of Mavs practice that was open to media.
Yeah, correct.
So he was just he worked on his free throws.
Free throws and sat down. That was the two.
Yeah, that was good. But let's talk about some of the other things. And I want to go to Jason Kidd's availability because he said something during his availability that I found was interesting. I believe this was Grant Afseth asked that in Game 2 it seemed like he utilized Dante Exum more as a third ball handler with Luka and Kyrie. And Kidd said, quote, "Yeah, I thought Exum did a great job in Game 2. We'll look to see if we can get that combination out there a little bit more as a third ball handler. Defensively, I thought he did really good. He's one of the few that has made a three in this series. He's knocked down in the open three. We're going to need that a little bit more from him. I thought the pace he came with was really good too." It seems like you might see Dante Exum first guard. I don't know if he'll be sixth man, but first guard off the bench. Seems like that might be the place because of the defense that he in theory can add, and then the shooting that apparently you've seen at least in a small sample.
It's a weird balance because if you've been listening to the show, if you're a Total Plus member, I have been pushing the Jaden Hardy agenda.
Yeah,
been a big fan of his. We saw a big diet of him in Game 1. Game 2, Jaden Hardy plays 2 minutes. Dante Exum takes most of those minutes. And I think what Grant was kind of getting at in his question, and what I think is actually a very good point by him, when we saw Dante Exum come in, what does that immediately do? It relieves some of that ball pressure and bringing the ball up the court, setting up the offense off of Luka. And we know how much of a load, I just detailed 5 seconds ago about how much of a load he's taken on in this series. If you can get even 8 possessions
what are you laughing about? I don't know what you're talking about.
We can get even 8 possessions with Luka off the ball and having him get some pin downs for him. Maybe he's the one getting a Spain. Like these things that it's so much for him to do, Exum is able to kind of relinquish some of those responsibilities off of Luka. So when you're watching on your TV and you're like, why is Dante Exum in the game? Yeah, he might not be Kyrie Irving and Luka with his ball handling, or even Jaden Hardy with his ball handling and creating. But what he can do is bring a calming, setting up factor of the offense and maybe get Luka some open looks. The main thing that he has to do is be confident in his shot. If he is not confident in his shot, he's going to get the Josh Giddey treatment. He's going to get the Maxi Kleber treatment, like the Russell Westbrook. Like in the NBA Finals, it feels like a lot of your role players are hesitant to shoot. And then when they do, it feels like none of them are even close to the basket. Now, Dante Exum did hit the three, the little kind of curl around behind the back pass that Luka threw to him last game. He's going to have to be confident in shooting, because what they might even do is, I'm detailing how they're going to get Luka open, Reggie. And they might just be like, all right, well, we'll let Dante Exum shoot. We'll sag off of him. We know that he's just trying to get Luka open. So you have to be a threat when you're on the court. And Exum is proven to be worth some minutes, but I'm still waning on which guard I want to see more of off the bench.
Another thing that I found interesting during the course of the media availability, Kyrie Irving was asked a question that I thought was really, really interesting. Because he was asked, what did you not like about games 1 and 2? And then he went further on to what does a much better game look like for you in Game 3? And I think that is the question that we're all asking ourselves. And I thought it was interesting that Kyrie was asked.
It was a great question.
One of the things that he mentioned, he said, I can be a lot more fundamentally sound, technically on my shots. So like literally the physical aspect of his shots being more fundamentally sound. I thought that was interesting. And then also not get into the paint often where it's 3 or 4 guys around me. I'm not making a pass. They're sending specific strategies against me to make it difficult. So like I thought those were, and that's just a small part. Kyrie gives long, luxurious answers, but I thought that was really interesting that he went directly to like the physical element of the mechanics of his shot being technically sound, and then also not getting into what I'll call like a defensive cul-de-sac where now you're then encircled and you can't get out of it. And I think that that's important, not just for Kyrie, for also Luka. Luka loves holding onto that basketball, trying to draw the defense in as late as possible and then kicking it out. And I feel like in this particular matchup, the Celtics are so good that you might get too far in where you can't actually throw back out of it. And I think that's where you saw some of the turnovers. You can maybe help yourself by making that pass earlier.
Yeah, the mechanics part of Kyrie is weird because we know he's a creature of habit like most NBA players are, but he's one of those guys first in the gym, working on his mechanics, very, very smooth. You see the same kind of jumper. I am not going to hypothesize, but I don't know, maybe Boston being there and all the stuff, maybe his mechanics got a little off and he was rushing. I have no idea. I'm not in Kyrie's head. But what I do know is I don't think you're going to see 3 games in a row of porous, not up to standards Kyrie Irving. He's back at home. You would think that it turns around here if it's going to turn around. The paint touches is interesting because of the whole scheming that the Boston Celtics are trying to do. We've seen in different series, Kyrie has got guarded differently in every series that we've seen. What was it? The Oklahoma City series, he was getting double every play. Minnesota, they were shading towards him. In the Clippers, they were kind of playing on one-on-one. Now he's playing against elite one-on-one defenders with huge gap help. The difference in how Luka and Kyrie guarded is night and day. With Luka, they are playing him straight one-on-one, and they are hugged on the offensive players for the Dallas Mavericks, not letting that outlet pass get to them. With Kyrie, they're kind of inviting him to make that skip pass and really sitting in the gaps on those drives. So I think that's what Kyrie's talking about. He's driving, and it looks open, quote unquote, but there's three guys swarming him, and they're trying to see is Kyrie going to make that skip pass to the corner or back to above the break behind him, where Luka is so proficient at. So I think it's a lot of Luka and Kyrie got some adjusting to do, but I think if you're a Mavs fan, you feel pretty confident those two guys can turn it around. Did
you have any notes that anything you learned that you wanted to kind of share from camp? Or from not camp, from the media day today?
Yeah, I thought Jaylen Brown's perspective was really interesting. I asked him about how do you keep your foot on the gas and kind of your mentality, because you're up 2-0, you have the series in your favor, and he's like, you kind of have to trick yourself into being down 0-2 and kind of play with a sense of urgency and not get ahead of the game. So I just wonder how much of that is just Jaylen Brown believing that, because he immediately started with, this is how I think. I can't speak for anyone else.
Yeah.
So I just wonder how much of that is throughout the Celtics of, oh, we're up 2-0. I'm seeing all the stats. 85% of these teams go on to win, and the series is pretty much over. 5 teams have come back from that. So I believe Jaylen Brown thinks that. I wonder how many of the Celtics believe that deep down in their heart.
I wonder if that's going to permeate, because we saw during Game 2, ESPN, or I guess ABC in that way, they showed us Jaylen Brown mic'd up, and he was talking a lot, trying to give those out, give that same perspective out. Before we go, I thought that this was fun during the course of media availability. Joe Mazzulla is the head coach.
This is fun.
Of the Boston Celtics, and literally the first question that was asked of him was asked from a ESPN Brazil reporter. And so this is the first question that he was asked about Jason Tatum, and here are the first part of Joe Mazzulla's answer.
My question is, do you think that we are watching the best version of Jason Tatum in these finals?
Yeah, I think it's pretty close. I think because of the type of player that he is, it's always going to look different because of his versatility. And you live in America or Brazil?
I live in Brazil.
Well, that's probably why you asked that question, and none of the American ones did, because they look at the lens differently of basketball. And so in America, nothing's ever good enough, and it's always about what can you do for me right now. And
all right, nice little PSA to all the American media.
Yeah, that was really...
That was the first question.
The very first question, he stops in the middle of his answer to ask the reporter, do you live in America, Brazil? So I just want you to... We're going to get a little bit of a feel for Joe Mazzulla as a human being, because he's not what you would, I guess, consider just like milquetoast or normal or average, because at the end of his media availability, everybody had maybe like 10, 15 minutes at the max. Typically whoever's organizing it, the gentleman does that. He's like, all right, thank you, coach, and he'll let him go. This is what happens at the end of media availability for Joe Mazzulla.
Hey, I got a question. Who do you think had the hardest adjustment to the media and the criticism? Because like the lens with which Brazilian soccer players are looked at is very similar to how American athletes are looked at by their media, right? And you look at where Neymar has been over his time and like taking on the number 10 and the number 9, like who do you think has dealt with the most, and how do you think that they've handled it? Because I feel like playing for the Celtics and representing the country of Brazil for its national soccer team, and then now you see Enric coming up, and like he's going to face that soon. So like, how do you think that's handled in your country?
That is Joe asking the ESPN Brazil reporter a question about soccer at the end of the media availability.
Literally, they go last question's answer. Everyone's starting to pack up, and he goes, no. I got a question for you guys.
And it wasn't for you guys. It was just that particular reporter, and they proceeded to have a 3-minute and 23-second conversation. Yes, I counted, where the rest of us are just looking around the room like, is this really happening? And they're just here talking about Brazilian soccer stars. And so that is the particular I guess personality that Joe Mazzulla has, and that was very much on display today. It was just odd. It was very odd.
It was odd. I mean, Joe Mazzulla, he definitely speaks from a place of knowledge. He had, but like you say, he's definitely not milquetoast. He had on basketball shorts, basketball shoes. He was ready to go hoop.
Yeah, and again, I don't think that this is inherently bad.
No,
just different. It was a funny note on a day.
It's working. They're up 2-0. So
I guess so. So there you go. Those are some things that we learn at the practice availability earlier today at the American Airlines Center for the NBA Finals. It's the Get Right here on 105 through the Fan, where you guys are asking a lot of questions. Somebody asked, am I crazy for thinking our crowd is going to seem kind of disappointing from an intensity standpoint after what we saw from Boston fans? I don't think so, especially because we've gotten from multiple people, Kyrie Irving, Mike Breen earlier today on Sean and RJ, that all said that it was kind of less big, less, I guess, raucous than they had previously expected. So Dallas Mavericks fans have an opportunity, and with a little bit of Spanish I got, I'm pretty sure that Luka was asked in one of those Spanish questions, a lot of Spanish questions for him today, that he wants the Dallas crowd to be loud. So I think that that's something that the Mavs fans have an opportunity tomorrow evening to show up and show out against Boston in that way and being loud and proud for these Mavericks.
I'll say this: if you do not think the Mavs can win, or you have a friend or family member that's going that does not think the Mavs can win the series, tell them don't show up.
Hey, yo, what are you doing right now?
If you don't think that they can win the series
with the way those tickets cost.
Okay, that's a good That's a good point. I didn't think about that. But you got to have some intensity, man. You got to think that your team is going to be the team that comes back and adds a 6 to that total, and it's no longer 5. Adds a 6. 6 teams come back from 2-0. You can't be in the arena Debbie Downing. They can feel that energy. You got to have intensity, man.
Okay.
Come on.
All right, Blake.
You got to be ready to run on the court for your team.
All right, don't do that. They will throw you in jail. I cannot advise that. They will put you.
Don't actually run on the court,
away.
But have it in your mind. What would be my game?
Don't let the intrusive thoughts win.